The stagecoach rolled into Murphy's, California on a dust-choked afternoon in June of 1878. And when the door opened, Dinah Olsen descended with a careful grace that spoke of both determination and pain. Her right leg dragged slightly as she planted her cane on the wooden step, and every eye on Main Street turned to watch her navigate the distance from coach to ground. The summer heat shimmered off the dirt road, and Dinah could feel the weight of those stairs like physical things pressing against her back. She had traveled 3 weeks from Chicago, leaving behind a life that had crumbled like old newspaper after the accident that took her ability to walk without assistance, and her fiancé's nerve to stand beside someone he now called broken. The driver handed down her trunk and carpetbag, tipping his hat with more courtesy than most men had shown her lately. Dinah adjusted the cane in her right hand, a sturdy piece of carved oak with a brass handle that had become as much a part of her as her own arm over the past 8 months. Her dress was travel-worn but well-made, the dark blue fabric dusty from the long journey. She was 22 years old and she felt ancient. "Miss Olsen." A woman's voice cut through the general murmur of the street, and Dinah turned to see a plump woman in a practical calico dress approaching with a welcoming smile. "I'm Martha Henderson. Your Aunt Alina wrote to me about your arrival. Welcome to Murphy's." "Thank you," Dinah said, grateful for the kindness in Martha's eyes. "I hope I have not inconvenienced you terribly." "Nonsense," Martha said firmly, taking Dinah's carpetbag despite Dinah's protest. "Your aunt and I were dear friends before she passed. God rest her soul. She would have wanted you cared for properly. My boarding house is just down the street. Can you manage, or should I fetch my son's wagon?" The question was asked without pity, just practical concern, and Dinah felt something tight in her chest ease slightly. "I can manage, thank you." They made their way slowly down the wooden boardwalk, Martha keeping pace without comment on the halting rhythm of Dinah's steps. The town was smaller than Dinah had expected, a collection of wooden buildings clustered along a main thoroughfare with mountains rising in the distance. The smell of pine mixed with dust and horses, and the yeasty scent of bread from a nearby bakery. Men in work clothes and women in sun-faded dresses went about their business, though more than a few paused to stare at the newcomer with the cane. "You will get used to the attention," Martha said quietly. "Small towns are curious about strangers. Give them a week and they will find someone else to gossip about." "I doubt that," Dinah said, then immediately regretted the bitterness in her tone. "I apologize. The journey was long." "No apology needed," Martha said. "I imagine you have been through quite an ordeal." They reached the boarding house, a 2-story structure painted white with green shutters and a wide porch that looked inviting in the afternoon heat. Martha led Dinah inside to a room on the first floor, which Dinah appreciated more than she could say. Stairs had become her enemy. "Rest yourself," Martha said, setting down the carpetbag. "Dinner is at 6. There are 4 other boarders currently, all respectable folk. 2 minors, a schoolteacher, and a cowboy who works at the Riverside Ranch just outside town." After Martha left, Dinah sank onto the bed and let herself feel the full weight of exhaustion. Her leg ached fiercely, the muscles tight and angry from the long hours sitting in the coach. She rubbed at her thigh through her skirt, knowing it would do little good but unable to stop herself. The doctors in Chicago had told her she was lucky to keep the leg at all after the carriage accident. The broken bones had healed poorly, leaving her with a permanent limp and chronic pain that varied from tolerable to excruciating depending on the day. Her former fiancé, Richard, had visited her exactly 3 times in the hospital before announcing that he could not marry a cripple. He had used that word, cripple, with a mixture of discomfort and disgust that still burned in Dinah's memory. His mother had been more direct, saying that a woman who could not walk properly could hardly be expected to run a household or raise children. The engagement had ended, and with it, Dinah's place in Chicago society. Her own mother had suggested delicately that perhaps Dinah might prefer to live with relatives out west, away from the pitying looks and whispered conversations. So here she was in Murphys, California, a mining town in the Sierra Nevada foothills that had seen better days, but still clung to life with the tenacity of gold country settlements. Her Aunt Eleanor had left her a small cottage on the edge of town, along with a modest inheritance that would keep Dinah fed and housed if she was careful. It was not the life she had planned, but it was a life, and she was determined to make something of it. Dinah unpacked her few belongings, hanging her dresses in the narrow wardrobe and arranging her books on the small table by the window. She washed her face in the basin, pinned her dark hair more securely, and tried to compose herself for dinner with strangers. The dining room was larger than she had expected, with a long table that could seat a dozen people. Only 5 places were set when Dinah entered at 6, leaning more heavily on her cane than she would have liked. The journey down the hall seemed longer than it should have been. 3 men and Martha were already seated. Martha made the introductions with practiced ease. The 2 miners were brothers named Jack and Sam Fitzgerald, rough-looking men with weathered faces who nodded politely. The schoolteacher was a thin man named Albert Morris, who had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. The cowboy was not yet present. "Isaac will be along shortly," Martha said as she brought out a platter of roasted chicken. "That boy runs on his own schedule sometimes, though I cannot complain since he always pays his rent on time." Dinah took her seat carefully, positioning her cane against the wall where she could reach it easily. The men were polite, asking general questions about her journey and her plans, and Dinah answered as best she could without revealing too much. She was still learning how to talk about herself without mentioning what she had lost. The door opened just as Martha was serving potatoes, and a man entered with the kind of easy confidence that came from being comfortable in his own skin. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that needed cutting. His clothes were clean but worn, the shirt and vest of a working cowboy, and he moved with a fluid grace that made Dinah's chest tighten with something she did not want to name. "Sorry I am late, Martha," he said, his voice warm and slightly rough. "Had trouble with a fence line that took longer than expected." "Sit yourself down before the food gets cold," Martha said, though her tone was fond. "Isaac, this is Miss Dinah Olsen. She arrived today from Chicago." Isaac Rourke turned his attention to Dinah, and she found herself meeting eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-green, like river stones. He smiled, and it was genuine, reaching all the way to those remarkable eyes. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Olsen," he said, taking the seat across from her. Then his gaze dropped briefly to her cane propped against the wall, and Dinah braced herself for the usual reaction: pity, discomfort, awkward questions, or worse, careful silence. Instead, Isaac just nodded and reached for the potatoes. "How was the journey?" "I have heard the roads from Sacramento can be rough this time of year." "They were," Dinah said, surprised enough to answer honestly. "But the scenery was beautiful enough to make up for the discomfort." "Wait until you see the high country," Isaac said, spooning food onto his plate. "The mountains here are something special, especially in summer. There are meadows up in the hills that look like someone spilled flowers across the grass." "Are you a poet, Isaac, or a cowboy?" Sam Fitzgerald asked with a grin. "A man can be both," Isaac replied easily. "Though my boss would probably prefer I spend less time describing flowers and more time mending fences." The table laughed, and the conversation flowed into easier channels. Dinah found herself relaxing despite her exhaustion. The food was good, simple but well prepared, and the company was better than she had expected. Isaac proved to be a natural storyteller, entertaining them with tales of ranch life that were funny without being crude. He had a way of including everyone in the conversation, drawing out even quiet Albert Morris with questions about the school year. Dinah noticed that Isaac never stared at her cane, never let his gaze linger on her leg or the way she had positioned herself carefully in the chair. He treated her exactly as he treated everyone else at the table, with easy courtesy and genuine interest. It was so different from the last few months of her life that Dinah felt something hard and tight inside her begin to loosen. After dinner, the boarders dispersed to their own rooms or the parlor. Dinah intended to retire immediately, but Martha insisted she at least see the parlor, which had a lovely view of the street and the mountains beyond. Dinah agreed, following Martha down another hallway, hyper-aware of the sound her cane made against the wooden floor. The parlor was indeed pleasant, with comfortable chairs and good light from large windows. Isaac was already there, standing by one window and looking out at the darkening street. He turned when they entered. "Miss Olsen," he said, "I hope you do not mind my saying, but Martha mentioned you inherited Alina Watson's cottage. I knew your aunt slightly. She was a fine woman." "Thank you," Dinah said. "I wish I had known her better. We corresponded, but I never visited." "The cottage is a good property," Isaac continued. "Solid structure, nice piece of land, but it has been empty for near 6 months now. It will need some work before it is fully livable." Dinah's heart sank. She had hoped the cottage would be ready for immediate occupancy. The thought of staying in the boarding house indefinitely, with her limited funds slowly depleting, was not appealing. "I can do basic repairs myself," she said, lifting her chin. "I am not helpless." Isaac's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes that might have been approval. "I did not imagine you were, Miss Olsen. But there is work that needs doing that is not about being helpless or capable. It is about having the right tools and knowing where the well is and which shutters are loose. I would be happy to show you the property tomorrow if you like, point out what needs attention." "Why would you do that?" Dinah asked, suspicion rising. Men did not offer help without wanting something in return. She had learned that lesson thoroughly. Isaac met her gaze steadily. "Because I knew your aunt and respected her. Because Martha would box my ears if I let you struggle needlessly. And because it is the neighborly thing to do." He paused. "But if you would prefer to manage alone, I understand completely. No offense taken." There was no pressure in his voice, no wounded pride or manipulation. He was simply offering and equally prepared to withdraw the offer. Dinah found herself off balance again, unsure how to respond to straightforward kindness. "I would appreciate seeing the property," she said finally. "Thank you." "I will come by after breakfast then," Isaac said. "Around 8 if that suits you." "That would be fine." Isaac nodded and excused himself, leaving Dinah alone with Martha, who was trying very hard not to look pleased with herself. "He is a good man," Martha said. "Isaac Rourke. He has worked at Riverside Ranch for near 5 years now, came out from Missouri after the war. He is honest and hardworking, and he does not drink or gamble overmuch, the kind of man you can trust." "I am not looking for a man to trust," Dinah said more sharply than she intended. "I am looking for a place to live and a way to support myself." Martha patted her hand. "Of course, dear. But there is no harm in accepting help when it is freely offered. Pride is fine until it keeps you from getting things done." That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed with moonlight slanting through the window, Dinah thought about Isaac's words at dinner and the way he had looked at her, or rather, the way he had not looked at her. He had not focused on her disability, had not treated her as damaged or pitiable. He had simply treated her as a person. It was such a small thing, and yet it felt enormous. She slept poorly, her leg aching and her mind racing with worries about the cottage and her future, and the 100 ways this new life could go wrong. But when morning came, she rose and dressed with care, choosing a practical brown skirt and white shirtwaist that would be suitable for inspecting property. Breakfast was a quieter affair than dinner, with the miners already gone to their claim and Albert Morris eating quickly before heading to the schoolhouse. Isaac arrived as promised at 8, looking fresh despite the early hour. He had a horse tied outside, a sturdy bay gelding with kind eyes. "The cottage is about a mile out of town," Isaac explained. "An easy walk on a good day, but the road is a bit rough. I brought Copper here in case you would prefer to ride." Dinah looked at the horse and felt her stomach drop. She had not ridden since before the accident, and the thought of trying to mount with her bad leg made her feel sick. But walking a mile on rough road would be equally difficult, and she knew it. "I am not sure I can mount," she admitted, hating the words even as she said them. Isaac nodded as if she had said something perfectly ordinary. "That is fair. How about this? I will help you up and we will walk slow. Copper here is steady as a rock. He will not spook or bolt, and if at any point you want down, you just say the word." "And you?" Dinah asked. "I will walk alongside. It is a nice morning for it." Somehow, with Isaac's assistance, Dinah found herself seated in the saddle, her cane secured to the side and her bad leg positioned as comfortably as possible. Isaac took the reins and started walking, keeping Copper to a gentle pace. True to his word, the horse moved smoothly, without sudden shifts or jolts. The morning was beautiful, the air still cool and fresh before the day's heat set in. Birds sang in the pine trees that lined the road, and wildflowers dotted the grass in shades of yellow and purple. Isaac walked with an easy stride, occasionally pointing out landmarks or offering bits of information about the area. "Your aunt loved that meadow there," he said at one point, gesturing to an open space carpeted with flowers. "She used to gather herbs for her remedies. Folks around here still miss her tinctures. She had a gift for healing." "I did not know she practiced medicine," Dinah said. "Not formal medicine," Isaac clarified, "but she knew plants and their uses. She helped a lot of people who could not afford a doctor or did not want one. She set my arm once when I broke it in a fall from a horse. Did a better job than most doctors would have, I reckon." They crested a small rise and Isaac stopped. "There she is." The cottage sat in a clearing surrounded by pine trees, a small structure of wood and stone with a pitched roof and a covered porch. It was more rustic than Dinah had imagined, but there was something appealing about it, a sense of solidity and peace. The windows were shuttered and the yard was overgrown, but the bones of the place looked sound. Isaac helped Dinah dismount, and she stood for a moment, leaning on her cane and looking at what was now hers. A place of her own. No one to answer to, no one to judge her or find her lacking. The weight of possibility pressed against her chest. "Let us take a look inside," Isaac said, producing a key that Martha had given him. "Watch your step. The porch boards might be loose." The interior was dim until Isaac opened the shutters, letting in streams of golden light. The cottage was a single large room with a sleeping area partitioned off by a curtain, a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, and space for a table and chairs. It was dusty and musty from being closed up, but Dinah could see the care her aunt had put into it. There were shelves lined with jars and bottles, a rocking chair by the fireplace, and a beautiful quilt folded on the bed. Isaac walked through the space with a practiced eye, checking the floorboards and the walls and the fireplace. "Structure is solid," he said. Roof looks good. The chimney will need cleaning before you use it, but that is easy enough. The well out back is sound. I checked it last month. The biggest jobs will be cleaning, airing things out, and getting supplies laid in. There is no glass broken, which is good. Windows intact. It is smaller than I expected, Dinah said, then felt foolish. What had she expected? A mansion. It is cozy, Isaac agreed. But it is enough for one person, and the land is good. There is a garden plot out back that just needs clearing. Your aunt grew vegetables and herbs. You could do the same if you have an inclination. I do not know the first thing about gardening, Dinah admitted. It is not complicated, Isaac said. Plants want to grow, you just have to give them the right conditions. I could help you get started if you like. There it was again, that offer of help with no apparent strings attached. Dinah studied Isaac in the light streaming through the windows. He was perhaps 27 or 28, with the kind of lean strength that came from physical labor. His hands were calloused and scarred, working hands, but gentle when he had helped her with the horse. His face was honest, with smile lines around his eyes and mouth. He did not look away when she stared, just waited patiently for her response. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked finally. "You do not know me." Isaac considered the question seriously. "I suppose because kindness does not require knowing someone, and because I have been in positions where I needed help and folks gave it to me, seems right to pass that along." He paused. "And because I watched you walk from the stagecoach yesterday and I saw how much strength that took. Most people would not have managed it with half your grit." Dinah felt her throat tighten. "Strength? I can barely walk." Isaac shook his head. "Strength is not just in walking, Miss Olsen. It is in getting up when you would rather stay down. It is in facing a new place and new people when it would be easier to hide. It is in walking from that stagecoach with your head up, even though you knew everyone was watching. That is strength." Something broke open inside Dinah, some dam she had built against feeling too much. Tears burned her eyes and she blinked them back furiously. "I am not strong, I am broken." "No," Isaac said firmly. "You are hurt. That is different from broken. Broken means beyond repair. You are healing." "That is not the same thing at all." "My fiancé said—" "Your fiancé was a fool," Isaac interrupted, and there was heat in his voice now. "Begging your pardon for speaking plainly, but any man who would turn away from a woman because of an injury is not worth your tears or your time. That is not love. That is fair-weather cowardice." Dinah let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "You do not mince words, do you?" "Not usually," Isaac admitted. "My mother always said it was my worst quality that I said what I thought too plainly. But I figure the truth is the truth, whether it is dressed up fancy or spoken plain." They stood in the cottage, dust motes dancing in the sunlight, and Dinah felt something shift inside her. Not healing exactly, not yet, but the possibility of healing. The idea that maybe, just maybe, she could build a life here that had nothing to do with what she had lost and everything to do with what she might gain. "I would appreciate your help," she said. "With the cottage and the garden, if the offer is still open." "It is," Isaac said, and his smile was warm. "We can start today if you like. Get the place aired out, do some basic cleaning. Then we can make a list of what needs doing and tackle it piece by piece." They spent the rest of the morning opening windows, sweeping floors, and assessing what needed to be done. Isaac worked with efficient competence, never making Dinah feel useless even though there were things she could not do as easily. When he needed to climb on the roof to check the shingles, he did so matter-of-factly, reporting back what he found. When she struggled to move a heavy trunk, he simply picked up one end without comment, letting her take the other so they moved it together. By noon, the cottage looked dramatically better. The musty smell was fading, replaced by fresh air and pine scent. The floors were clean, the furniture uncovered, and Dinah had a clear sense of what the space could become. "You should probably stay at Martha's for another week or so," Isaac said as they shared a simple lunch of bread and cheese on the porch. "While we get things properly set up here. Make sure the well water is good, get the stove checked, things like that, but it will not take long. This is a good, solid place. I can afford perhaps 2 more weeks at the boarding house," Dinah said. "After that I will need to be here, ready or not." Isaac nodded. "Then we will make sure it is ready. I have tomorrow off from the ranch. I can come by and work on the bigger items. And evenings after work I can help with smaller things." "I cannot pay you," Dinah said, needing him to understand. "I have some money, but it needs to last." "I am not asking for pay," Isaac said. "I am offering help. There is a difference." "But why?" Dinah pressed. "What do you get from this?" Isaac looked out at the trees and the mountains beyond, his expression thoughtful. "My father died when I was 14, he said eventually. "Left my mother with 4 children and a farm that was failing. Neighbors helped us. They did not ask for anything in return. They just helped because it was the right thing to do. We made it through because of that kindness. I have never forgotten it." He turned back to Dinah. "Maybe that is what I get from this. The knowledge that I am doing what was done for me. That I am living up to what those people taught me about how to be decent." Dinah felt the tears threaten again and swallowed hard. "Thank you," she managed. "Truly." "You are welcome," Isaac said simply. They rode back to town in companionable silence, Dinah more comfortable in the saddle now, beginning to trust Copper's steady pace. Isaac walked beside her, occasionally pointing out a bird or a plant, filling the space with easy observations that required no response. At the boarding house, he helped her down and handed over her cane. "I will see you at dinner," he said. "And tomorrow I will come by after breakfast. We will make a proper plan of attack for the cottage." That evening at dinner, Dinah found herself watching Isaac more carefully, noticing things she had missed the night before. The way he listened when people spoke, really listened, giving them his full attention. The way he was gentle with Martha, clearly fond of her in the way one might be fond of an aunt. The way he teased the Fitzgerald brothers without malice and drew out quiet Albert Morris with questions about his students. He did not pay Dinah any special attention beyond common courtesy, but somehow that felt more respectful than if he had fawned over her. He treated her as part of the group, an equal participant in the conversation. When Sam Fitzgerald made a slightly off-color joke, Isaac did not try to shield Dinah from it or apologize on Sam's behalf. He simply laughed along with everyone else, and when Dinah caught his eye, there was a glint of humor there that seemed to say, "See, you are one of us now." After dinner, Isaac excused himself early, saying he had to check on a horse at the ranch that had thrown a shoe that morning. Dinah found herself disappointed, though she could not have said why. She retreated to her room and tried to read, but her mind kept wandering to the cottage and to Isaac's words. "Strength is not just in walking. It is in getting up when you would rather stay down." She thought about the past 8 months, the pain and the rehabilitation and the slow realization that she would never walk normally again. She thought about Richard's rejection and his mother's cruelty and her own mother's gentle but firm suggestion that Dinah would be happier away from Chicago. She thought about the journey west, every mile an agony of discomfort and fear, and she realized that Isaac was right. She had been strong. She had survived. She was still surviving, still pushing forward even when it would have been easier to give up. The next day dawned clear and warm, promising heat by afternoon. Isaac arrived at Martha's just after breakfast, and they walked together to the cottage, Dinah setting the pace with her cane. Isaac matching her stride without complaint. He carried a sack of tools and supplies, and when they reached the cottage, he set to work with focused determination. Dinah watched him repair loose porch boards and shore up a wobbly railing, his movements economical and practiced. She asked questions, wanting to understand what he was doing, and Isaac explained patiently, showing her how to recognize sound wood from rotten, how to properly drive a nail, how to test for stability. "You should know these things," he said. "Living alone out here, you need to be able to handle basic repairs. I can teach you what I know." "Even with," Dinah gestured at her leg, "especially with," Isaac said. "There is no repair work that requires perfect legs. It is all hands and eyes and knowing what you are doing. Your hands work fine. Your eyes work fine. Your mind is sharp. That is what matters." He said it so simply, as if it were obvious, and Dinah felt something loosen in her chest again. For months, everyone had focused on what she could not do. Isaac focused on what she could do. The difference was profound. They worked through the morning, taking breaks when Dinah needed to rest her leg. Isaac never commented on the breaks, just used them as opportunities to assess the next task or share stories about the area. He told her about the ranch where he worked, about his boss Jim Riverside who was gruff but fair, about the other cowboys and the cattle and the rhythm of ranch life. "It is hard work," he said, "but honest. I like knowing what is expected of me and being able to see what I have accomplished at the end of the day. There is satisfaction in that." "What did you do before you came here?" Dinah asked. Isaac's expression closed slightly, and Dinah immediately regretted the question. But then he sighed and sat back on his heels, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I was a soldier," he said. "Fought in the war. After it ended, I drifted for a while trying to figure out who I was without the uniform. Ended up in California and found work on ranches. Discovered I was good with horses and cattle. The work suited me, so I stayed. Do you ever think about going back to Missouri?" "No," Isaac said flatly. "Nothing left for me there. My mother passed while I was fighting. My siblings scattered to the winds. The farm was sold for debts. California is home now." There was pain in his voice, old and scarred over but still present. Dinah recognized it because she carried her own pain in much the same way. "I am sorry," she said, "for your losses." "Thank you," Isaac said, "but that is old history now. I have made peace with it." They worked until early afternoon, then Isaac insisted on walking Dinah back to town. "You have been on your feet enough for one day," he said when she protested. "No point in overdoing it and setting yourself back." "I hate being limited," Dinah admitted as they walked slowly back along the road. "Everyone is limited in some way," Isaac said. "I cannot sing to save my life, which is a shame because I love music. I am terrible at mathematics, which made my schooling a trial. I am scared of deep water because I nearly drowned once as a boy. We all have things we cannot do or struggle with. Yours is just more visible than some. People judge visible limitations more harshly," Dinah said. "Some people do," Isaac agreed. "Stupid people. But their judgment says more about them than about you. My boss Jim has only one arm, lost the other in a mining accident before he started ranching. He is the best horseman I have ever known and can outwork most men half his age. Anyone who judged him on his missing arm would be a fool. Same goes for you. You have an answer for everything, do you not?" Dinah said, but there was no heat in it. Isaac grinned. "Not everything. But I have lived enough to know that what people see as limitations are often just different ways of doing things. You cannot walk easily, but you can think and plan and work and live just as fully as anyone else. Maybe more fully, because you do not take it for granted." They reached Martha's boarding house and Isaac tipped his hat. I have to work at the ranch the next few days, but I will be back Friday afternoon. We can do more at the cottage then. Thank you, Isaac, Dinah said, for everything. My pleasure, Miss Olsen. Please call me Dinah. Miss Olsen makes me feel like a schoolmarm. Isaac's smile widened. Dinah, then. And you should call me Isaac, not Mr. Rourke. Agreed, Dinah said, and found herself smiling back. Over the next week, a pattern emerged. Isaac worked at the ranch during the days, and Dinah spent her time getting to know Murphy's, exploring the small town at her own pace. She discovered that Martha had been right. The initial curiosity about her faded as people grew accustomed to seeing her moving through town with her cane. The general store owner, a man named Peter Chen whose family had come to California during the gold rush, was friendly and helpful, extending credit when Dinah explained her situation. The seamstress, a widow named Rose Miller, offered work doing detail stitching that could be done sitting down, and Dinah accepted gratefully, knowing she would need income beyond her small inheritance. In the evenings, Isaac continued to share dinners at Martha's, and Dinah found herself looking forward to those meals more than she wanted to admit. Isaac was easy company, his humor gentle, and his intelligence evident in the way he approached problems and conversations. He read widely despite his limited formal education, borrowing books from Albert Morris and discussing them with surprising insight. They talked about everything and nothing. Dinah told him about Chicago, about her life before the accident, carefully editing out the most painful parts. Isaac shared more about his experiences out west, the beautiful and hard realities of frontier life. They discovered shared loves of literature and music, debated the merits of different poets, and laughed over the absurdities of daily life. Martha watched their growing friendship with undisguised approval, and the other boarders teased Isaac gently about his attentiveness to the new arrival. Isaac took it in stride, never embarrassed or defensive, and Dinah appreciated that he did not act as if spending time with her was something to be ashamed of or apologized for. Friday came, and Isaac returned to help with the cottage as promised. They spent the afternoon working together, and Dinah marveled at how comfortable it felt, this partnership of labor. Isaac had brought seeds for the garden, and they spent time clearing the plot and preparing the soil. It is late for planting most things, Isaac explained as they worked, but we can still get beans and squash and some herbs in. They should mature before the first frost if we are lucky. I have never grown anything in my life, Dinah confessed, kneeling awkwardly in the dirt, her cane laid aside. What if I kill everything? Then you will learn what not to do next year, Isaac said pragmatically. That is how gardening works, trial and error. Even experienced gardeners lose crops. It is part of the process. They planted seeds in neat rows, Isaac showing Dinah how deep to place them and how to firm the soil. His hands were sure and gentle, and Dinah found herself watching the way he moved, the unconscious grace of someone comfortable in his body. It was not attraction, she told herself firmly. It was just appreciation for competence. But later, when Isaac helped her to her feet and his hand lingered on her arm perhaps a moment longer than necessary, Dinah felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with appreciation for competence. Dinah, Isaac said, his voice suddenly serious. I want to ask you something, and you can say no without any awkwardness between us. Dinah's heart started to pound. All right. There is a dance next Saturday in town, a summer social. I was wondering if you might like to attend with me as my companion for the evening. Dinah stared at him, her mind racing. A dance, where people moved and swirled and walked without thinking about it, where her halting steps and cane would mark her as different as broken. I cannot dance, she said, her voice flat. Neither can half the people who attend, Isaac said. Sam Fitzgerald has 2 left feet. Peter Chen says dancing is against his religion, though I suspect he just does not like it. Albert Morris spends the whole evening by the punch bowl. You do not have to dance to attend a social. People will talk, Dinah said. About you bringing a woman with a cane. People always talk, Isaac said. It is what people do, but I do not care what they say. I would like to spend the evening with you, talking and laughing and maybe eating too much of whatever baked goods the church ladies provide. Dancing is optional. Your company is what I am asking for. Dinah looked at Isaac's earnest face and felt her defenses crumbling. Why? She asked softly. Why me? Isaac was quiet for a moment, clearly choosing his words with care. Because I like you, he said finally. I like the way you think and the way you talk. I like your determination and your humor. I like that you do not suffer fools and that you ask good questions. I like spending time with you, Dinah. It is as simple as that. Nothing is ever that simple, Dinah said, but her voice lacked conviction. Maybe it should be, Isaac said. Maybe we complicate things that do not need complicating. I am asking if you would like to attend a social with me. Yes or no. It does not have to mean anything more than that. But it would mean more, Dinah knew. In a small town like Murphy's, a man asking a woman to a social was a declaration of interest, a public claim. If she said yes, people would start talking about them as a couple. They would have expectations and opinions. And when it all fell apart, as Dinah was certain it would, everyone would have witnessed her failure. But Isaac was looking at her with those river stone eyes, and Dinah found herself wanting to be brave, wanting to take the risk, wanting to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have this. Yes, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I would like that. Isaac's smile was incandescent. Wonderful. I will call for you at 7. It is held at the church hall, so not far to walk. That night, Dinah lay awake for hours, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. What was she doing? She barely knew Isaac. He was kind, yes, and helpful, but that did not mean he truly cared for her. Maybe he felt sorry for her. Maybe this was charity dressed up as courtship. Maybe he would regret asking her and spend the whole evening wishing he had chosen someone else, someone whole and graceful who could dance properly. But another part of her, a part she had thought dead since the accident, whispered that maybe Isaac meant exactly what he said, that he liked her, that he wanted her company, that she was worth wanting. The next week passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Rose Miller helped Dinah alter one of her better dresses, a green silk that brought out the color of her eyes. Martha lent her a shawl and fussed over her hair, clearly delighted by the development. The other boarders teased Isaac mercilessly, which he bore with good humor and the occasional well-aimed verbal riposte. Dinah visited the cottage twice more during the week, once alone and once with Isaac. The place was truly coming together now, cozy and livable. Her garden had begun to sprout tiny green shoots that filled her with absurd pride. She was building something here, a life that was hers and no one else's. Saturday arrived with perfect weather, warm but not hot, with a breeze that carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. Dinah dressed with shaking hands, securing her hair in a style that was elegant but practical, and studied herself in the mirror. The green dress fit well, skimming her figure without being improper. Her face looked less pinched than it had when she arrived in Murphy's, less haunted. The mountain air and regular meals and purposeful activity agreed with her. Isaac called for her precisely at 7, dressed in clean dark trousers and a vest over a white shirt, his hair neatly combed. He looked handsome and nervous, which oddly settled Dinah's own nerves. "You look beautiful," he said simply, offering his arm. "Thank you," Dinah said, taking his arm and gripping her cane with her other hand. "You look very nice as well." They walked slowly toward the church, Isaac matching his pace to hers without comment. Dinah could hear music and laughter spilling from the hall, and her stomach clenched with anxiety. But Isaac's presence beside her was steady and reassuring, and she found herself drawing strength from it. The hall was decorated with ribbons and paper lanterns, and it seemed like half the town was in attendance. A fiddle player and a guitarist provided music, and couples were indeed dancing, though Isaac had been right about the varying levels of skill. Some moved with grace, others with enthusiastic energy that had little to do with keeping time. Isaac led Dinah to a row of chairs along one wall, settling her comfortably before going to fetch punch. Several people greeted her, and Dinah was surprised to find that most were friendly, welcoming her to Murphy's and asking how she was settling in. A few stared at her cane with undisguised curiosity, but no one said anything rude. Isaac returned with 2 cups of punch and a plate of cookies. "Martha made those," he said, pointing to the sugar cookies. "They are the best. Get them before Sam Fitzgerald eats them all." They sat and talked and watched the dancing. Isaac pointed out various townspeople, providing amusing commentary on their quirks and histories. Peter Chen stopped by to welcome Dinah properly and invite her to the store for tea whenever she wanted company. Rose Miller complimented Dinah's dress and reminded her about the sewing work. Albert Morris brought his sister to meet them, a pretty young woman who taught at a school in a neighboring town. Dinah gradually relaxed, realizing that Isaac had been right. This was not about dancing. It was about community, about being part of something larger than herself. People were friendly and inclusive, and if some were curious about her disability, most seemed willing to look past it. A slower song started, and Isaac turned to her. "Would you like to try?" he asked gently. "We do not have to move much. Just sway a bit. I will hold you steady." Dinah's first instinct was to refuse, but she looked at Isaac's hopeful face and thought about what he had said about strength, about getting up when you would rather stay down, about facing things even when they scared you. "All right," she said, "but if I fall, I am taking you down with me." Isaac laughed. "Fair enough." He helped her to her feet and led her to a quieter corner of the dance floor, away from the more energetic dancers. Dinah leaned her cane against a nearby post and took Isaac's hand, placing her other hand on his shoulder. He held her waist gently, firmly, and began to sway in time to the music. It was not proper dancing, not really. They barely moved, just swayed in place, but to Dinah it felt like flying. She was doing something she thought she would never do again. She was dancing, or at least a version of it, and Isaac was looking at her like she was the only woman in the room. "You are doing wonderfully," he murmured, and Dinah realized she was smiling, truly smiling for the first time in months. The song ended, and Isaac escorted her back to her seat, retrieving her cane and handing it to her with no fuss. Dinah felt like her heart might burst. Such a small thing, a minute of swaying to music, but it felt monumental. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me," Isaac replied. The rest of the evening passed in a warm glow. They talked and laughed and ate too many cookies, and when it was time to leave, Dinah felt genuinely sad to go. Isaac walked her back to Martha's, and they stood on the porch in the moonlight, neither quite ready to part. "I had a wonderful time," Dinah said, "better than I expected." "I am glad," Isaac said. "I did too." He hesitated, then said, "Dinah, I know this is fast and I do not want to presume anything, but I would like to keep spending time with you, courting you properly if you are amenable." Dinah's breath caught. "Courting?" "Yes," Isaac said firmly. "I know you have been hurt. I know you have reasons to be cautious, but I like you very much, and I think we could have something good together if you are willing to give it a chance." "Isaac, I cannot," Dinah struggled to find words. "I am not who I was before the accident. I am limited. I will always limp. I will always need the cane. There are things I cannot do." "I know," Isaac said. "And none of that changes how I feel. You are smart and strong and interesting. You make me laugh. You challenge me to think differently. Those are the things that matter to me, not whether you can walk without a cane." "What if you change your mind?" Dinah asked, and she hated how small her voice sounded. "What if you decide later that it is too much, that I am too much trouble?" Isaac stepped closer, and in the moonlight his eyes were luminous. "Dinah, I cannot promise I will never disappoint you or that we will not have difficulties. But I can promise that I will not change my mind because of your leg. That is not who I am, and I hope you come to know me well enough to believe that." Dinah wanted to believe it. She wanted it so badly it scared her. "This is foolish," she whispered. "We have known each other less than 2 weeks." "Sometimes you just know," Isaac said. "I have been drifting for years, never feeling settled anywhere. But when I am with you, I feel like I have found something I did not know I was looking for. That is not foolish. That is luck." "You are too good with words," Dinah said, but she was smiling through tears. "Is that a yes?" Isaac asked hopefully. "It is a maybe," Dinah said. "Ask me again in a week when I have had time to think clearly." "Fair enough," Isaac said. "I can wait a week." He tipped his hat and left, and Dinah stood on the porch long after he disappeared down the street, her heart racing and her mind spinning. Could this be real? Could she trust it? Could she trust herself to try again after failing so spectacularly before? The next week was both wonderful and terrifying. Isaac continued his work at the ranch, but spent every free moment helping with the cottage or simply keeping Dinah company. They talked endlessly, learning each other's histories and hopes. Isaac spoke of his dream to someday own his own small ranch, a modest spread where he could raise horses and cattle and build something lasting. Dinah shared her love of reading and her secret desire to perhaps teach, to pass on knowledge to others. "You would be a wonderful teacher," Isaac said when she mentioned it. "You explain things clearly and you are patient. Albert is always complaining about needing help at the school. You should talk to him." "I have no credentials," Dinah protested. "Neither does half of Albert," Isaac pointed out. "He was a shopkeeper before he became a teacher. Out here, credentials matter less than ability and willingness. If you want to teach, you should try." It was typical of Isaac. Dinah was learning to see possibilities where she saw obstacles. He had a way of reframing problems that made them seem manageable. Not easy, but possible. It was one of the things she was coming to love about him. Love. The word had crept into her thoughts unbidden, and Dinah did not know what to do with it. Could she be falling in love with Isaac Rourke after less than 3 weeks? It seemed absurd. It seemed impossible. It seemed very much like what was happening. On the day Isaac had asked her to give him an answer, Dinah woke with a strange sense of calm. She knew what she wanted to say. The fear was still there, but it was no longer paralyzing. Isaac had proven himself in a dozen small ways, showing her through actions as well as words that he valued her for who she was, not despite her limitations but inclusive of them. They had arranged to meet at the cottage that afternoon. Dinah arrived first, using the walk to settle her thoughts. The garden was growing nicely, the tiny sprouts now recognizable as the plants they would become. The cottage was clean and ready for her to move in, which she planned to do at the end of the week. She had a home. She had work with Rose that would provide modest income. She had neighbors and a community beginning to accept her. She had built a life here in just a few weeks, and she had Isaac. He arrived on Copper, dismounting with easy grace and tying the horse to a post before approaching the porch where Dinah waited. "Hello," he said, and there was nervousness in his voice that matched her own. "Hello," Dinah replied. "Thank you for being patient this week." "I told you I would wait," Isaac said. "I meant it. I would have waited longer if you needed." "I do not need longer," Dinah said. "I know my answer." Isaac stood very still, and Dinah could see him bracing himself for potential rejection. It made her heart ache that this good, kind man was afraid she would turn him away. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I would like you to court me. Yes, I want to see where this goes. Yes to all of it." The smile that broke across Isaac's face was like sunrise. He stepped forward and took her hands, his grip warm and strong. "I promise you will not regret this," he said fervently. "Do not make promises you cannot keep," Dinah said, but she was smiling. "Just promise to be honest with me." "That is all I ask." "I can promise that," Isaac said. "Always." He lifted her hand and kissed it, a gesture both old-fashioned and sweet, and Dinah felt the last of her walls crumble. She was doing this. She was taking this risk. She was choosing hope over fear. The next several weeks unfolded with a sweetness that Dinah had never expected to experience. Isaac courted her properly, with Sunday drives in a borrowed wagon, quiet dinners at Martha's, and long conversations on the cottage porch as the summer evening cooled into night. He brought her wildflowers and helped her finish setting up her home. He introduced her to people at the ranch, including his boss Jim Riverside, who proved to be as formidable and kind as Isaac had described. Jim studied Dinah with sharp eyes, and then nodded as if she had passed some internal test. "Isaac talks about you constantly," he said bluntly. "It is good to see him happy, and anyone tough enough to move out west with what you have faced has my respect." Dinah started helping Albert Morris at the school 2 afternoons a week, working with younger students on reading. She discovered she loved teaching, loved seeing the moment when understanding dawned on a child's face. Albert was grateful for the help and hinted that there might be a more permanent position if she wanted it. She moved into the cottage and found immense satisfaction in having a place that was entirely hers. Isaac visited often, always proper, always respectful of boundaries, but their connection deepened with each conversation. They talked about the future in vague terms, testing the waters of shared dreams. "I am saving money," Isaac told her one evening as they sat on her porch watching the sunset. "In a few years, I should have enough to buy land and start my own place. Nothing grand, but mine." "That sounds wonderful," Dinah said. "You would be a good rancher." "I hope so," Isaac said. Then, carefully, "Would you want to be part of something like that? A ranch, I mean. A simple life out here." Dinah's heart raced. He was asking about forever without quite saying the word. "I think I would," she said slowly. "I have grown to love it here, the mountains and the pace and the community. And the company," she added, glancing at him. Isaac reached over and took her hand. "I love you, Dinah," he said quietly. "I know it is fast, but it is true. I love your strength and your sharp mind and the way you see the world. I love your determination and your kindness. I love you and I want to build a life with you." Tears sprang to Dinah's eyes. "I love you too," she whispered. "I did not think I could feel this way again, but I do. I love you, Isaac." He leaned over and kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and Dinah felt like she was home. They were married 3 months later on a bright October afternoon with the aspen leaves turning gold on the mountainsides. It was a small ceremony at the church, with Martha and Jim and Albert and the Fitzgerald brothers and what seemed like half the town in attendance. Dinah wore a new dress that Rose had helped her make, a lovely cream-colored gown with lace at the collar. Isaac wore his best suit and looked so handsome that Dinah's breath caught. She walked down the aisle with her cane, her head high, and when she reached Isaac, he took her hand and squeezed it gently. The minister spoke about love and commitment, about facing life's challenges together, and Dinah felt the truth of those words settle into her bones. "I do," she said when the moment came, her voice clear and sure. "I do," Isaac echoed, and his eyes were bright with emotion. They kissed as husband and wife, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. Martha was crying openly, and even gruff Jim Riverside looked suspiciously misty-eyed. The reception was held at Martha's boarding house, which she had decorated with ribbons and flowers. There was food and music and laughter, and Dinah danced with her husband, the same swaying-in-place dance they had done at the summer social, but now it felt like so much more. They were partners now, bound together by choice and love. Later, when the party wound down and they returned to the cottage that would now be their shared home, Isaac carried Dinah over the threshold despite her laughing protests about her weight and his back. "You are my wife," he said, setting her down gently inside, "and this is our home. I am starting as I mean to go on." "And how is that?" Dinah asked, looping her arms around his neck. "By showing you every day that I love you," Isaac said. "By building a life with you, by being the partner you deserve." "You are already that," Dinah said. "You have been from the beginning." They made love that night with tenderness and care, Isaac patient and attentive, making sure Dinah was comfortable, that her leg was positioned properly, that she felt cherished. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Isaac's arms around her, Dinah felt a peace she had not known was possible. "I was so scared when I came here," she murmured. "I thought my life was over." "Your old life was over," Isaac said. "This is your new life, our life." "It is better than anything I imagined," Dinah said. "Good," Isaac said, kissing her forehead. "Because it is only going to get better from here." Isaac continued working at Riverside Ranch while saving money for their eventual land purchase. Dinah took on more teaching responsibilities as Albert Morris grew to rely on her skills and steady presence. The cottage became a true home, filled with the rhythms of married life. They worked the garden together, putting up vegetables for winter. They read aloud to each other in the evenings, debating characters and plots. They entertained friends and became even more embedded in the community. Dinah's leg still hurt on bad days, and she would never walk without the cane, but it mattered less and less. She had learned to work within her limitations, to adapt and find new ways of doing things. Isaac helped when she needed it and stood back when she did not, always trusting her to know what she required. "You were right," she told him one evening nearly a year into their marriage. "That first day, what you said about strength, I did not believe you then, but I do now." "What changed your mind?" Isaac asked. "Living," Dinah said. "Building this life with you, realizing that I am capable of more than I thought, that my worth is not determined by how easily I can walk." "I wish you had never doubted it," Isaac said, "but I am glad you know it now." In the spring of their second year of marriage, Dinah discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with both joy and terror. She worried about her ability to care for a baby, about whether her leg would make motherhood impossible. But Isaac was thrilled and confident. "You will be a wonderful mother," he said firmly, "and I will be right there beside you, helping with everything." The pregnancy was not easy. Dinah's leg hurt more from the additional weight and moving became even more difficult, but the community rallied around her. Martha visited regularly with food and advice. Rose came by to help with preparations. Even Jim Riverside stopped by occasionally, gruffly offering to help with anything that needed doing around the property. Their son was born on a cold November evening, a healthy baby with a lusty cry and a thick shock of dark hair. They named him James, after Isaac's father, with the middle name Charles after Dinah's late Aunt Alina's husband. James was strong and curious from the start, and Dinah found that motherhood suited her better than she had dared hope. Yes, there were challenges, but there were solutions too. Isaac built a special chair that allowed her to sit comfortably while nursing. They arranged the cottage so everything she needed was within easy reach. They adapted as they always had. "See," Isaac said one night, watching Dinah rock their son to sleep. "I told you that you could do this." "We can do this," Dinah corrected. "I could not manage without you." "That is what marriage is," Isaac said. "Doing it together." 2 years later, their daughter was born, a tiny thing with Dinah's dark eyes and Isaac's smile. They named her Elena Rose, honoring both of their pasts. Elena was quieter than James had been, more observant, and Dinah loved watching her take in the world with solemn attention. By then, Isaac had saved enough for a down payment on land. With Jim Riverside's help as a reference, they secured a loan for 80 acres about 5 miles from Murphy's, good grazing land with a creek running through it and timber for building. Isaac began construction on a house, working evenings and weekends, and Dinah helped with the planning and design, making sure there were features that would work for her mobility needs. The house took 2 years to complete, built slowly and carefully as money allowed. It was a simple structure, 2 stories with a wide porch and windows that looked out toward the mountains. But it had a main bedroom on the ground floor for Dinah, and railings on all the stairs, and doorways wide enough for easy passage. It was designed for their life, their family. They moved in when James was 5 and Elena 3, and Dinah stood in the empty parlor feeling overwhelmed by gratitude. They had done this. They had built a ranch and a home and a family. They had created a life that was rich and full and entirely theirs. Isaac came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it is perfect," Dinah said. "I think we are very lucky." "Luck has nothing to do with it," Isaac said. "This is hard work and love. That is what built this." The ranch grew slowly but steadily. Isaac bought cattle and horses, building his herd with care and patience. Dinah continued teaching part-time in town, riding in a special saddle Isaac had commissioned that accommodated her leg. The children grew, healthy and happy, learning to help with the ranch work as soon as they were old enough. James proved to have his father's gift with animals, gentle and intuitive. Elena loved books like her mother, often found reading in quiet corners when she should have been doing chores. They were good children, and Dinah loved them with a fierceness that sometimes surprised her. The years rolled by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the changing seasons. There were hard times, droughts that stressed the cattle, winters that were brutal, illnesses that scared them. But there were far more good times, harvests that were bountiful, foals born healthy, children's laughter echoing through the house, quiet evenings on the porch with Isaac's hand in hers. Dinah's leg never improved, but she adapted continually, finding new ways to manage as she aged. Isaac remained patient and supportive, never making her feel burdensome. Their love deepened and matured, becoming something solid and enduring. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Dinah with a gift, a beautiful carved cane made from walnut with their initials intertwined on the handle. "I wanted you to have something special," he said. "That cane has been with you through everything. It deserves to be beautiful." Dinah ran her fingers over the smooth wood, tears filling her eyes. "It is perfect," she said. "But you know the cane is not what got me through everything. You are, you and your belief in me." "We got through everything together," Isaac corrected. "That is how it works." "Yes," Dinah agreed. Together. Their children grew and eventually married, James to a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, and Elena to a teacher from Sacramento who loved books as much as she did. Grandchildren arrived, filling the house with new energy and joy. Dinah found grandmotherhood suited her wonderfully. All the love with slightly less of the exhausting daily responsibility. Isaac's hair went gray, and Dinah's leg hurt more in cold weather, but they were content. They had built something lasting, not just the ranch but a family, a legacy, a love that had weathered every storm. On a warm summer evening, 30 years after Dinah had first arrived in Murphy's with her limp and cane, she and Isaac sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. Their grandchildren were playing in the yard, their shrieks of laughter carried on the breeze. "Do you ever think about how different your life might have been if you had not come west?" Isaac asked. "Sometimes," Dinah admitted, "but I cannot imagine it, really. This is my life. You and the children and the ranch in this place, I would not trade it for anything." "Even if you could walk without the cane?" Isaac asked gently. Dinah considered the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "Not even then. Because the cane was part of the journey that brought me here. It made me strong in ways I never would have been otherwise. It taught me things I needed to learn, and it brought me to you." Isaac smiled and took her hand. "Do you remember what I said to you that first day at the cottage? About strength?" "How could I forget?" Dinah said. "You told me strength was not just in walking. That it was in getting up when you would rather stay down." "Do you believe it now?" Isaac asked. "I know it now," Dinah said firmly. "I have lived it, and I have watched our children learn it too. That strength comes in many forms that limitations can be adapted to. That love and determination can build a life worth living." "That is my Dinah," Isaac said warmly. "Always teaching, even now." "I learned from the best," Dinah said, leaning into his shoulder. "A cowboy who saw strength where others saw weakness, who offered help without judgment, who loved me when I could barely love myself." "You made it easy to love you," Isaac said. "You still do." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the mountains, their hands intertwined, their lives fully and beautifully entwined. The journey that had begun with a stagecoach arrival and a simple statement about strength had led to this. A home, a family, a love that had endured and deepened across decades. Dinah thought about the frightened, broken young woman who had stepped off that stagecoach 30 years ago, and she wished she could tell her that everything would be all right, better than all right, that the life waiting for her was richer and fuller than anything she had lost, that the man who would become her husband was already in Murphy's, waiting to show her that strength came in many forms, and that love could heal what medicine and time could not. But that young woman would learn it all in her own time, just as Dinah had. She would learn that limitations were just different ways of doing things. She would learn that community mattered more than perfection. She would learn that love saw past surface things to the heart beneath. And she would learn that a cane was not a symbol of weakness but a tool for strength, something that allowed her to stand and walk and build and live. It was not what defined her. It was just one part of a much larger, much more beautiful story. "What are you thinking about?" Isaac asked, his voice soft in the gathering darkness. "Everything," Dinah said. "How far we have come, how blessed we are, how grateful I am for every choice that led me here." "Me too," Isaac said, kissing her temple. "Me too." Their grandchildren ran up to the porch, breathless and begging for a story before bedtime. Dinah smiled and agreed, settling into her chair as the children clustered around her feet. She began to tell them about a young woman who came to Murphy's long ago, a woman who thought she was broken but who learned she was just healing, a woman who found strength and love and purpose in a place she had never expected. Isaac listened to her weave the story, embellishing and editing, making it appropriate for young ears. He caught her eye and winked, and Dinah felt her heart overflow with love and contentment. This was her life. Hard-won and deeply cherished. Built on a foundation of determination and adaptation, and most importantly, love. The kind of love that saw past limitations to possibility. The kind of love that believed in strength that was not just in walking, but in rising, in trying, in living fully regardless of obstacles. Dinah finished her story and shooed the children off to bed. She and Isaac remained on the porch a while longer, reluctant to end the perfect evening. The stars came out, brilliant in the clear mountain air, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. "I love you," Dinah said, the words as natural as breathing. "I love you too," Isaac replied. "Always have, always will." They eventually made their way inside, Isaac steadying Dinah as they navigated the steps, her cane tapping a familiar rhythm. Inside, their home glowed with lamplight and the lingering presence of family. Photographs lined the walls, chronicling their life together. Their wedding, the children as babies, the ranch through the seasons, grandchildren arriving one by one. It was a good life. A full life. A life that had almost not happened because Dinah had been too afraid to try, too convinced of her own brokenness. But Isaac had seen her differently. He had seen her strength when she could not, and in seeing it, he had helped her find it. As they prepared for bed, moving through the comfortable routines of long marriage, Dinah caught sight of herself in the mirror. Gray now threaded through her dark hair and lines creased her face, but her eyes were bright and her expression content. She looked happy. She was happy. Isaac came up behind her and met her eyes in the mirror. "What do you see?" he asked. "I see a woman who survived," Dinah said, "who built a life beyond her worst fears, who loved and was loved, who found strength she did not know she had." "I see all that too," Isaac said. "And I see the woman I fell in love with 30 years ago, the one who stepped off that stage coach with her head held high despite everything, the one who never stopped fighting for the life she wanted. We built it together," Dinah said, echoing his words from years past. "Yes," Isaac agreed. Together. They climbed into bed and Isaac pulled Dinah close. Outside, the ranch was quiet, the animals settled for the night, the land stretching out dark and peaceful under the stars. Inside, two people who had found each other against all odds rested in the certainty of their love. Dinah's cane stood beside the bed, within easy reach, a constant companion and a symbol of her journey. It had been with her through the darkest days and the brightest. It had supported her as she built a new life. It had been there when she married, when she gave birth, when she held her grandchildren for the first time. It was as much a part of her story as anything else, but it was not the most important part. The most important part was love. The love Isaac had shown her from the beginning, seeing her as whole when others saw her as broken. The love she had learned to give herself, accepting her limitations and celebrating her strengths. The love that had grown between them, nurturing and sustaining them through everything. Dinah drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, grateful beyond words for the life they had built. She dreamed of mountains and meadows, of children's laughter and ranch work and long evenings on the porch. She dreamed of strength and love and second chances. She dreamed of everything she had gained because one man had looked past her limp and her cane and seen her true self. In the morning, they would rise and begin another day on the ranch they had built together. There would be work and challenges and the thousand small tasks of daily life. But there would also be love and partnership and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. Isaac had been right all those years ago. Strength was not just in walking. It was in getting up, in trying, in building, in loving. It was in facing life with courage and determination. It was in accepting help and offering it in return. It was in seeing past surface things to the truth beneath, and Dinah had learned that lesson well. She had lived it every day for 30 years. She had taught it to her children and would teach it to her grandchildren. It was a lesson worth passing on, a truth worth sharing. That strength came in many forms, that limitations could be overcome or adapted to, that love saw what mattered and dismissed what did not, that a woman with a limp and a cane could build as full and beautiful a life as anyone else. Maybe more beautiful because it was hard-won and deeply appreciated, because nothing was taken for granted, because every joy was celebrated and every challenge was met with determination. Dinah had come to Murphy's, California, thinking her life was over, but it had only just begun. And what a life it had been! What a life it continued to be! Rich and full and absolutely worth every struggle. As she slept beside the man who had loved her faithfully for 3 decades, Dinah smiled. Her journey from that frightened woman on the stagecoach to this contented wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, and rancher had been long and sometimes difficult. But it had been worth every step, every painful, limping, determined step, because those steps had led her home, to Isaac, to this life, to this love, to this strength she had found within herself and been helped to recognize by a cowboy who understood that strength was not just in walking, but in living fully regardless of how you got there. And that, Dinah thought in the moment before sleep claimed her completely, was the truest wisdom of all.